I haven't heard any protocol, so I'm a bit lucky because I don't know how to deal with protocol. My name is Forcheh, has been introduced, and when I was asked to be a panelist, I didn't actually manage to get a copy of the book, and then on the weekend somebody called me and said, your name is in the papers, you have to be a panelist in this big debate. And I started rushing to the internet and to everywhere, and luckily I managed to get a copy of the book, and I've been reading it ever since. So I was thinking, the people who have spoken, I know them, and they are more like parents to me in terms of the environment, at least two of them. So I was wondering, what should I say if I'm in a panel with them? And I had to think first before I start writing. And so you see, I said purpose of my involvement. And this being the year where Madiba passed away, I thought I should try to go back and draw some inspiration. So I said I had no knowledge or input about the invitation. Sorry. I said there are many who have questioned the wisdom of inviting Jevin to ASD and giving him more space to continue to undermine first African statisticians. I've heard it many times. And I say, however, the invitation confirms what I've observed in the past decade about association with that those at the helm of African statistics today are true leaders as prescribed by one of our greatest heroes. And he said a true leader must work hard to ease tensions, especially when dealing with sensitive issues. Extremists thrive when there is tension and pure emotion tends to separate rational thinking. That was Mandela in his conversation with myself. And also in every dispute, you eventually reach a point where neither party is entirely right or entirely wrong, when compromise is the only alternative for those who seriously want peace and stability. And I believe when I was reading the internet, there had been a lot of exchanges going on. And even though we are not in a political gathering, I thought we had reached a stage where the true leaders had emerged. And despite what has been written on the internet, it was the same party who was greatly criticized internet who invited Jevin here. So I just wanted to pay tribute to that. I also reflected on what could I really make an impact on. Sorry, you're not hearing me. Sorry. I also reflected what can I make an impact on which would be different from what the other speakers would have said. And I decided to stay strictly on the academic ground. I think they've already demonstrated that they know the environment far better than anybody else. So I decided to look at the methodology, which is normally key, and then look at some selected claims and assumptions, and then review the conclusions made. So I'm going to start with the essence of the methodology, and that is listed quite early in the book. The author says an ethnography of African statistics. So I thought, let me look at ethnography versus quantification. And ethnography is basically a qualitative research tool, which means it's extremely useful for getting initial information, but it doesn't lend itself to generalizations in the same way as quantified things do. So I said, for a study supposedly covering the entire continent, it is not clear from reading the book what the study groups were and what research design was used to select the study subjects and ensure that they are representative of the study population. As I said, the importance of statistics lies in quantification of the extent of the problems identified in a qualitative study, using methods described by CRR as putting chance to work. So we in statistics do respect that. Yes, you may do your focus group discussion, you may do your qualitative study, but if you intend to generalize, you must then quantify so we know the extent. And unfortunately, the methodology used itself does not lend itself to such generalizations. I said, I think one is the most unfortunate thing about the book is chapter 1. I think if chapter 1 was the last chapter, the book may be more appealing. But I find the entire introduction chapter so subjective, and I conclude that it doesn't even qualify as an in-depth qualitative study that could lead to an evaluative quantitative study to establish the magnitude of the problems raised. And just to pick some examples, he said in the book, the scholars who are best equipped to analyze the validity and reliability of the data are often users themselves and are thus reluctant to undermine the data sets that are the bread and butter of their data. And I just looked through it. I mean, the users themselves are not even part of the interview panel. So I say, how many such scholars exist? How many have you interviewed? And what have you found to be the prevalence of your assertions? Okay. On page 9, the author derives evidence-based policy and claims that the expression of measurability and accuracy is misleading. Well, here, actually, it may not be very important, but I think based on my own route, I thought I should react on that. Basically, I'm now called an applied statistician, but I started my statistics more from a theoretical perspective until I attended a conference in South Africa, where by some chance, the Minister of Finance, then Trevor Manuel, came to give a small speech during the conference dinner. I think it was about 2000. And he made a very simple plea, which as a young guy caught my attention. He said, as a politician, I would like to say all the good things about the economy, such as, I'm paraphrasing him because I don't have the notes. Unemployment has been halved, agricultural output is at all-time high, school progression is over 90%, and so on. But then he continued to say, but I'm also a decision maker, and what I need from you statisticians are the facts. And I know you can give me, and I'll support you. Later on, I think in one of the meetings in one of these halls, I saw him in one of the UN posters when they were talking about evidence-based decision-making. And personally, since then, my research has almost all entirely been based on doing research for evidence. So, and also, almost in the last 10 years, I've had the privilege to sit in some ASDS, some StatCom, and so on. And what has inspired me most have been the same, maybe the Professor Ben and Pali, in terms of their ceaseless energy to drive African statistics forward. In fact, in one of the StatCom, the issues of 2010 census round was heavily discussed, and you could see the personal sacrifices beyond office that they had to put in place to ensure that the various African countries, including countries like Sudan, Angola, Rwanda, agreed to have censuses. So for me, when I look at criticism in the papers, we suggest that the reason they are not supporting the book has to do with some personal benefits. I thought it was a bit unfortunate and probably not well informed. I would just want to go to a few claims. I would try to skip some of them so that we have time. The author claims that statistical capacity of African states greatly expanded during colonial and post-colonial period and was greatly impaired during the economic crisis of the 70s. Where that puzzled me. I happened to have gone to school in Cameroon, and I had to leave my parents after standard 4 because there were no schools anywhere near my village. So I don't know how capacity in Africa could have been so good in the colonial and post-colonial period when there were no schools to train teachers, never mind statisticians. But I'm not a historian, so maybe it's true somewhere. So the author typically makes the assertion such as post-colonial national accounts have typically been estimated using this method. I've left out the other one and you see I've highlighted typically. That itself is not the problem. It's a generalization that comes after that. Immediately after I say GDP statistics from Africa, then are best guesses of the aggregate production. Now, there's no way you can link that assertion to the conclusion. That analysis has not been done and therefore ought not to be presented as a conclusion from the assertion. And as I said, chapter 1 was pretty unfortunate, and if I had not been asked to come here, I may have skipped the whole lot, but I decided to stay. But what came to me reminded me of when I was a student, and there's a very popular newspaper in UK called The Sun. And people got very fed up with what they published, especially about the precious princess. And that's it. But don't you worry about the facts. And he said, I'm not going to allow facts stand in the way of a good story. And unfortunately, I've taught chapter 1, tried to not allow facts stand in the way of a good story. Also, just picking on a few others, I'll skip some. That the phrases such as, how much do we know about income levels, huge discrepancies and alarming gaps, and ranking African countries according to GDP is misleading. Again, for me, they are almost a tabloid reporting. Here, the book is supposed to be a serious academic work, and it's being read as such. The author states as a major basis for assertions in the book that while data are often presented as facts, they are better presented as products whose production is subject to economic and political constraints. Well, maybe that is okay, but such assertions are nothing to do with African statistics. Absolutely nothing. You can write a book about any statistics, and you can come to the same conclusion or otherwise. Okay. I say, for example, when we say that HIV incidence or new infections in country X is 2.1% and 2.4% in country Y, these are estimates that have been subject to many assumptions and measurement errors. And facts, they are not facts harvested from a tree and counted as apples. And that's the reality. I mean, HIV is one of our most serious challenges. That's why I pick it. And I've been doing a lot of research on it because of the controversy in the numbers. So those statements should not go along because you're doing a book on poor numbers in Africa. Some more time. 1 minute. Okay. As I said, let me skip as many as possible. I think I've made the point in terms of some of the points. Now, one of the things that stands out in the paper, in the book, sorry, is the issue of the Ghanaian GDP and rebasing. Now, I picked that because the issue of rebasing, and I'm not an expert in GDP, but I've done quite a bit of work in other areas like health. And a comparable system is the International Classification of Diseases. For many years, they were using version 9, and currently we're in version 10, which has been going for about 10 years. And one of the things that comes out straight away is that because of reclassification, some disease classes have moved to other major groups. Now, if you, for example, look at Botswana papers, in ICD-10, respiratory infections were ranking number 1, 2, and 3. But if you use ICD-10, sorry, in ICD-9, ICD-10, they will disappear. Nothing to do with the quality of the data. So, with respect to rebasing, you have to check to see what is the impact of rebasing on your estimate, maybe on the previous one if you're interested. And you cannot use that as a critique of Ghanaian GDP. So, I don't know what happened in SNA and so on, but I think it was important because on all the internet pages I read, the Ghanaian GDP kept coming up. Let me see if I can skip. I will just go straight towards, I think that's the Ghanaian one, I'll go straight towards the end. So, in concluding remarks, maybe let me skip that as well, I don't think it's necessary. So the final one, I say, what should we do about the book then? Because ultimately, I think that's what everybody here wants to hear. So, should we ban it? Well, my observation is that it never works. So for this to be effective, we have to buy the copyright, withdraw all copies from the shelves and burn them. And that's obviously not practical. Okay. So what else can we do? We can conduct a concerted campaign against it. But I still remember when I was a young student, Salman Rushdie wrote the book, Satanic Verses. I never heard of him until there was a fatwa issued against him. Then the book became a bestseller. So making a campaign against it is also futile. So some have said, why don't we ignore it altogether and hope that the controversy will disappear with time? Okay, maybe that could work. So what should be done? I thought the book should be seen as a scholarly attempt to document and understand the production of GDP statistics in the countries visited. Not in Africa, but in the country visited to start with. The ethnographic approach used has some level of success in identifying some of the problems faced in the countries visited. The study is, however, descriptive, and the author acknowledges that and does not lend itself to the gross generalization that it makes. So further in-depth and more quantitative studies are thus required in order to generalize the findings. So thank you.